Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dog and Bandits Hollywood Week. I'm Warren Phillips, and today we have another big star with us. We're talking to Mr. Eddie Deezen. Eddie has been in Grease 2, 1941, I Want to Hold Your Hand, War Games. He's an actor. When you see him, you say, oh, I know that guy. Wonderful guy, so fun to talk to, and a big comic book fan, which is a big plus for us. We like that so much. I want to thank again Steve Joyner for helping set this up. And without further ado, Eddie Deezen. We'll be speaking to Mr. Eddie Deezen. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time.
It's my pleasure, Warren. Great to be here.
So, how old were you when you knew that acting was in your blood?
It's a good question. Well, it was kind of like the process of elimination. I couldn't do anything else. So I was kind of the class clown in high school. So about 18, about my senior year, I think I was that late. I resolved to go to LA, try to make it in movies, try to get into the movies, and my dad was a very generous guy. He had his flaws, I guess, like all parents, but he was a generous guy and he would send me $400 a month those first couple of years. And that kept me going in those days.
So, walk us through what was an audition like at that time?
Well, it depends what audition you mean. Some were different, some there was one person. Sometimes there was a crowd of people there, sometimes it was a big cattle call. Sometimes you were like the only one there. So it depends. Now, the Grease audition was my first movie. Grease audition, there were three people there with me. There was the casting director, Joel Thurm, the director, Randall Kleiser, and the producer, Alan Carr. So they were there. Now, Warren, I went in to the audition. They were all it was 50-50. Half of them were Fonzie guys, Fonzie type guys, in leather jackets, American Graffiti guys, and the other half was girls in poodle skirts and saddle shoes. As far as I remember, I could be wrong, but I was the only geek there. I was the only nerdy guy there. So I went early. I had an early Pee Wee Herman suit. I dressed in a suit with a bow tie. I swear to God, white bucks. And I knew the movie was Grease. I heard the movie was called Grease, so I put grease in my hair. Vitalis, I think it was, or Brill Cream. I greased my hair. I was like, oh, it's called Grease. Little did I know nerds didn't have the greasy hair, but so I put that in my hair. I combed it down and I went in for the audition. Now, this is a religious story. I don't know if you're religious or not, but this is how I got Grease. I went in for the audition. Eugene has like 3 or 4 lines. So I go, hi, it's Eugene. They read me my lines. I go, hi, it's Eugene. Oh, thank you. Then the pie hits me, but I had like 3 lines. But I noticed I was reading more and they were nudging each other. They were nudging each other. I thought that was a good sign. I know, like, because guys, guys will be around, they'll see a hot girl, and they'll nudge each other. Hey, look at that one, So I figured if they were nudging each other, it was a good sign. Anyway, a couple days later, Paramount Studios called my agents. They said, we want Eddie for the part of Eugene in Grease. So I was over the moon, I'm like, God, I'm in a movie with friggin' John Travolta, the hottest star in Hollywood, Olivia Newton-John. So I called my parents. I called all my friends. I'm going to be in this movie with John Travolta. It's called Grease. Da, 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 da. I was getting, I got scale at the time. It was like $400 or $500. I thought I was like, J. Paul Getty. I thought I was a millionaire. Bill Gates. Anyway, a couple of days later, Paramount called my agents. They go, look, Eugene is a small role. We're going to have to cut Eddie out of the movie. We're sorry.
Oh.
So my agents called me. They tell me the news. Of course, I want to jump off a cliff. You're kidding, right? Not only did I lose my first movie, but I told everybody. I told my parents, my family, everybody, I'm going to be in this movie. So my agent comes and picks me up. She goes, we're going to go to church and pray. All right, what the heck? I'm Jewish. But anyway, when she drove me to a church, there's a little church off Hollywood Boulevard, off Hollywood, Vermont. It's called Our Mother of Good Counsel. Mm-hmm. She drove me there. She goes, we're going to light candles at an altar. So she gives me matches. I light 2 candles at an altar. I prayed fervently. I go, please, dear God, let something good happen. Please, dear God. I prayed so hard. Anyway, a couple of days later, the what do you call it? The payoff. A couple of days later, Paramount called back. We want Eddie back in the movie. So now my religious friends go, that was divine intervention, was a religious story. My secular friends say you lucked out. So you can take the story however you want, but I swear to God, that's how I got Grease. That was the most important audition of my life.
Wow. And when you get on the set, are you nervous at all? Are you just confident that, you can nail these lines and that you could do this?
Well, I didn't have many lines to worry about in Grease. I had like 3 or 4 lines. So I was, of course, a little nervous, but it was more exciting than anything. I think, going into Paramount Studios, I swear to God, Paramount was always my favorite studio. Paramount, had the Marx Brothers and Bob Hope and all these great movies I loved, So I thought Paramount was the coolest studio. We filmed at Paramount. We were on location at these high schools. It was big crowds there. It was very crowded set. It was not a small set. There were tons of extras, tons of dancers, the cast, the crew. So there was hundreds of people, it seemed like. So I think I was too stupid to be nervous. I was too excited. I was 20 years old, 2 years out of high school, and I'm in a movie with John Travolta. So I was so thrilled. I don't remember being nervous. I'm sure I was, but I remember more the excitement, the thrill of it. It was like surreal, and everybody was nice. Everybody was wonderful. No mean people. A lot of times you do a movie and there's one jerk, one asshole, but non Grease, there were none. Everybody was wonderful. The cast, the crew, the extras, the dancers, everybody was wonderful. Everybody was nice to me.
I want to talk, a lot more about your career, but I also want to ask you as an actor, as an artist, at what point did you feel like you made the right choice that you could do this as an actor? That you're good at what you do, you're in demand, and this was the right choice for you.
The first couple years, I had two, and you know the business, you know how tough it is. A lot of actors go through their entire career, and sadly, it's a sad profession in that way that they never do get that feeling. What you're talking about, that great feeling. I got it after those first 2 years. I got Grease. And
Mhm.
then I finished that. Then I did a low budget science fiction film called Laser Blast, which was nothing 3 days, but I was working. And then I got I Want to Hold Your Hand, a Beatles movie, Bob Zemeckis, his first movie, the first film Steven Spielberg ever produced. So I think Warren was the first year, the 77, and I say, oh my God, this is it. I'm in the business now. I had a bad year. The next year was slow, but almost nobody's year is steady in showbiz. Nobody goes just like that. So it kind of went like that. But 77 was where I got the first taste of what you're talking about, where I go, this is cool. I think I can do this. I can work in movies. It's not that hard, and yeah, I enjoy this.
Now, were they sending your agent scripts, or were you reaching out to say like, "Hey, I'd be interested in being in these features"?
100% my agents. They would get the breakdowns. I knew nothing about any of these movies. They would get all the breakdowns. I do that now with Stevie. Stevie's my agent. We do signing shows, and
Yeah.
people will PM me on Facebook or whatever. Eddie, there's a show in Florida. Eddie, there's a show in North Carolina. Look into it, and I will PM Stevie. I'll go, Stevie, check this out. It's a whole different process. In those days, it was 100% my agents. They would get me. I was a goofy 20-year-old kid. What did I know? I didn't, and they would get, in those days, I don't know if they still even get them, but it was called the breakdowns. They get the breakdowns, and they go, we're looking for a Johnny Weissmuller tough type. We're looking for a Sean Connery cool type. We're looking for a Mae West sexy type. So, we're looking for a nerdy type. That would be me. And they would send me out on those roles. And there were roles I lost too. I had a lot of disappointments in those years too, but I got some good roles. Yeah.
With Grease, and you mentioned the other films you do. I Want to Hold Your Hand. Now you're out there. Now you're a face. People know who you are. Did you feel pressure on you now that the anonymity is kind of gone? Like people are recognizing you?
No, not so much. Again, I was more happy. I was thrilled in those early years. Yeah, nobody really hassled me. Nobody gave me a hard time. There were a couple weird incidents, some gnarly ones over the years, but usually people were pretty friendly to me when they would recognize me. And they do kind of recognize to an extent, but I was never a star in the sense that that Tom Cruise is a star, or Tom Hanks is a star. But sometimes it recognized me. People were usually pretty cordial. I remember one gnarly incident. What you're talking about? I was walking down Sunset Boulevard once in Hollywood. This is like maybe 40 years ago, my early days. I was walking down Sunset Boulevard. This had to be in the 80s. But
Mhm.
I'm walking down and I passed a halfway house, and there these derelict guys, drunks and drug addicts, and they're out there. Just one of these halfway houses on Sunset. And I'm passing by a guy. Hey, you're Pee Wee Herman. I go, no, no, sir, I'm Eddie Deezen. He goes, yeah, come on, you're Peter. A couple more homeless, not homeless guys, but these guys that, they're, I don't want to say anything disparaging because they're fighting their battles like everybody else, but they were like these derelict guys. Few more crowd around me, a few more. There were 6, maybe 10 guys. Hey, it's Pee Wee Herman. Look, the guy. I go, no, no, I'm Eddie Deezen. I go, I'm kind of like Pee Wee. He's an old friend of mine. I did a movie with him, but I'm Eddie Deezen. I'm a nerdy type. I was the guy in Grease.
Yeah.
So then 15 guys, about 20 guys, more are coming out. It's like, hey, everybody, Pee Wee Herman's here. They're crowding around me. It's starting to get a little weird. But no, no, I'm Eddie Deezen. I swear I'm not Pee Wee. Finally, I swear to God, there was like 30 or 40 guys, really. And these were tough hombres. These were tough guys, thugs, criminals, God knows what they did. They could be, whatever. Luckily, they didn't have weapons, but they're crowding over. They go, hey, come on, admit it, you're Pee Wee Herman. So it's starting to get scary. So finally, I thought, oh my God, I only have one chance to go. I go, you know what? You got me. I'm Pee Wee Herman. You're right. I am Pee Wee. I knew you were Pee Wee. So I shook hands with all these idiots. They think they met Pee Wee Herman to this day, but I'm trying to save my, I didn't want to get beat up or, beaten to a pulp. So I said, I'm Pee Wee Herman. I shook hands with them. Hey, see you later, you guys. And I walked off. To this day, all these guys, if they even remember the day, they think they met Pee Wee Herman that day.
Tell us a little bit what it's like for you the first time you see yourself on screen. What kind of rush was that? Or were you just so nervous that it just sort of balanced itself out?
Well, I kind of thought I was weird looking. I remember I went to the Grease premiere. That was I think yeah that was the first. No, I went to the I Want to Hold Your Hand premiere. Was the first time I saw me, and I thought that was pretty good because I came out pretty good in that, and they gave me a good role. Now Grease, I had some of the stuff I did in the movie was cut out. I didn't know what the editing room was. You go in and you're ignorant. I was 20. You don't know the movie make process. The process is almost everybody in the movie is going to get some of their stuff edited out. There's just not that you're not good, but there's not room for everything. And you do these takes. You think I did this great thing. I did this dance. dance, or I did this dramatic scene, or I did this love scene, and it gets cut out. And Grease, I had some stuff cut out. I had some shtick cut out, some gags, and yeah, I was dancing all around the dance scene a lot. Most of that was cut out. You see me in little bits. I walked down the stairs. The T-Birds messed with me, and then I had a scene where I get the pie in the face. You see me jumping around in the dance scene, and then the last scene I waved to John and Olivia, when the car flies off. But that's what I had left. But anyway, to answer your question, I went to the premiere and I was heartbroken. I thought, oh my God, they cut so much stuff out. But it was kind of sad, I remember. I went to the Grease premiere, and instead of being joyous, which it should have been, because it was this beautiful, great movie, I was sad because I'd been cut out a lot. I remember I was sad, yeah.
You speak about Grease. A few years later, Grease 2 comes around, and
Right,
they get in touch with you, and they say, Travolta's not in it, Olivia Newton-John's not in it. We have Adrian Zmed, we have Michelle Pfeiffer.
right.
Is there any kind of like, is this going to work on your mind, or are you just happy to be back?
Just happy to be back. And that's another thing. Most actors, we don't have that option. You get Harrison Ford, they want you to play James Bond. He goes, I don't think that's right for me. They turn it down. Most actors, you realize that, the business, I'd say 98% of the business, 98% of the actors aren't working out there. There's millions and millions of us out there. So any of us who work are blessed and we're lucky. Talent, of course, has a bit of it, and whether the casting director likes you, whether the co-stars like you, but we're grateful for the work. So I jumped in Grease too. Oh yeah, sure. And of course, I missed John. I loved John Travolta. I loved Olivia, but I didn't think about it. And it was Michelle Pfeiffer's first movie, so I didn't know who she was. Maxwell, I didn't know. Now, they were both wonderful, nice people. Maxwell, my first day on the set of Grease 2, I go in, and this is where my heart kind of sank. It was ambivalence, but I went my first day on the set. I swear to God, Maxwell Caulfield knocks on my dressing room. Eddie, would you like to come to my dress? I can't do an imitation. He does a British accent, and he's a great guy. I don't want the story to be disparaging,
Right.
but he invites me to get Eddie. Would you like to come to my dressing room and have some tea and cookies? So all right, so I go over. We have tea and cookies. I'm eating tea, and he gives me these little English cookies, and I'm thinking, oh my God. I go, this movie is gonna bomb. That was the first inkling that I go, this is gonna bomb. I go, this guy can't replace John Travolta. Everybody's waiting to see Danny Zuko. Danny Zuko and Kaneki, these macho, testosterone happy guys, millions of girls. This guy's giving me tea and cookies, and I think I knew at that moment. It was the first day, and I thought this movie's gonna sink, and it did. It was kind of disappointing. Now, it's not as bad as people think. Stevie and I were talking about it at breakfast today and go, it's not that bad of a movie. It's anticlimactic after Grease, because anything is anticlimactic after Grease. It's like you do The Wizard of Oz. You go, we're going to do The Wizard of Oz too. Now, you can make this great movie, and it's going to be anticlimactic because it's Wizard of Oz. You go and make Casablanca, 6 years after Casablanca, and it's not going to be as good, because nothing's going to be as good as Casablanca. And it was anticlimactic after Grease. But the way I think it's looked at now, 40 years we have a perspective. It's not that bad of a movie in its own right. The dance numbers are incredible. You see like 200 dancers doing a perfect dance step, and I watched that scene. I marvel. Not one person is out of step. The numbers aren't quite as good as Grease, but they're enjoyable numbers. Maxwell is a likable guy. A lot of women I know thought he was hot. A lot of women think Maxwell was hot. And Michelle Pfeiffer, I walked up to her on my first day I saw her. I swear to God, or and I went up to her on the first day of set, and I was like mesmerized. She was like Marilyn Monroe, drop dead beautiful. And I walked up to her in a daze. I go, "You're beautiful," and she goes, "Thank you." She's very gracious and sweet. And that was the only time I ever talked to Michelle. But little did I know, she's one of Hollywood superstars now. But she was absolutely so incredibly gorgeous. It was unbelievable to see her in person. It was like like seeing a rainbow or something. She was so beautiful.
I'm very curious about when you're on the set and you're there for a while, shooting a film. What do you guys do on the downtime? Like when you're not in the scene, or maybe they're not filming, how do you guys sort of fill those gaps between when you guys are working?
Yeah, we mingle. You find somebody on the set you like, and you kibitz, you chat. You go in your dressing room. We take a nap. You go there. There's just dead time, and you have to get up. On a movie. And girls, it's even worse. Women will get up like an hour earlier than guys because they have to get all their makeup put on. Early in the morning. So the women's calls will be like maybe 5 or 4:30 in the morning. Guys, our calls will be 6 or 7 in the morning, very early, 6, and get up. So you're tired. So you get some time off. You go to your dressing room, you take a nap, or you can study lines. You go to your room and you want to run lines, sure, and we'll run our lines together, back and forth, stuff like that. I literally remember sometimes I have a TV and you could watch TV, or I would often play solitaire. I would have a deck of cards and I just play solitaire on my bed in my room.
You posted something I thought was absolutely fascinating on Facebook about a month or so ago about one Airplane, and that you were cast or you went in to read for Airplane.
Right.
Could you describe that experience a little bit? Because I think
Yeah, that
it's
was a
pretty
heartbreaking one
wonderful.
because it was such a great movie. It's one of the funniest movies of all time. It's a marvelous comedy.
Mm.
I went in, I was called in, and the Zucker brothers were there, and the other guy, Jim Abrahams or Abraham, whatever his name was. I think he recently passed away, or I think he did. God rest his soul. But I went in, and for some reason, they didn't think I was funny at all. Now they had me read for the Robert Hayes role, and people go, "What did they? It's so stupid. It's like Gone with the Wind." Then they had me read for the Clark Gable, the Rhett Butler role. It's like it's so stupid. But Robert Hayes is like this handsome guy, and he had a straight, a deadpan delivery. That's what they wanted, and that's not me. I'm a mugger. I make faces for a living. I'm not a mugger, but I went in and I remember reading the Robert. We're going to bring the plane down, Diane. What was whatever the girl's name was? And the scene where Robert Hayes has the microphone. He goes,
Mm.
"Bring the plane," and he's talking him down. And I'm reading that scene, and it's crickets. I'm like going, da, 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 bring the plane down, and there's like crickets in the room. Da, 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 crickets, not one laugh. So I went in, they thanked me and I laughed, and this was the movie I think I left. No, I think that was Animal House, but I left this movie. They didn't laugh one time. To this day, the Zucker brothers probably think I'm the worst comedian in the world. I don't know, but it was a dead thing. I read for the wrong role, and it was just one of those auditions. And they're not all going to be gems. That's the way it is. Some auditions are going to be better than others. And the other funny thing, Warren, is you go into some auditions and you think you killed it. You go in and you go, "Oh man, I killed it," and you never hear from. And then I remember literally once I had an audition, I forget what it was for, and I came out of it. My agents go, "How did it go?" And I go, "That was the worst audition of my life." And my agents go, "That's funny. They just called and said they want you for the role." Literally, it was just like that. So you don't know, they're seeing through their eyes, and it's all subjective. Everybody's seeing you. Somebody, "Oh, Eddie's really funny," and somebody go, "This little Jew's not funny at all." Whatever, everybody sees it through their own eyes, and that's all it is. It's based on the casting director's opinion. The director would probably have a say, maybe they'll get one of the actors that would say one of the leads, but whatever. But it's based on their opinions, and that's how you get the role. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Is it tough sometimes though, when you get a script or something and you're looking through it and you're saying, A, I don't like this, or B, it's not making a lot of sense, but I still got to go in there. I still have to, I want to audition for this to get yourself up and ready to, give it all for something that you don't think is all that great?
I think, yeah, I never remember turning an audition down saying I won't go in on this. So you're right. There were probably some, none come to mind right now, but I'm sure there were some where I go, "This is flat, this is never going to work." But you go in and you try to make it your best you can. You make the best the way you have. It's kind of like, I would say it's kind of like going to school in the cafeteria. You get your lunch, and whatever they serve, that's it. I don't like this stew or whatever. I don't like this bologna sandwich. Well, you go hungry then. Don't eat it, but you take what you want, and you try to get the role, and you try to make it the best you can. Yeah.
Did you enjoy television as much as movies?
I never did as much TV as movies. I did much more movies. I did a Magnum PI. I was writing about it. It was fun. I was writing about it today on Facebook, and that was probably the best thing I ever did. That was fun. Today, by the way, is the anniversary of Hawaii becoming our 50th state. So I wrote about being in Hawaii. It was like going to paradise. Tom Selleck was such a wonderful guy. He was great, and all the Magnum crew were great. Higgins was great. All the guys that played Rick and TJ were all wonderful to me. And it was an episode about softball. It was about a girls' softball team, and Dick Shawn was the star of it. The great Dick Shawn, from the producers.
Mhm.
Great comedian, and he was a wonderful, great guy. He was like a father to me. He couldn't have been nicer. And one of the girls on the softball team was hot for me. I swear to God, she was after me. She was really hot for me. She was chasing me around. And Tom Selleck had us to his room once to watch a game, and Tom Selleck's giving me advice about women because you got to play hard to get. And I go, "No, I want to get rid of this girl," but he's giving me advice, and I go, "Well, if we go, actually, I go to the Club Hubba Hubba. There's a Club Hubba Hubba," and he goes, "The Club Hubba Hubba is a dump." He goes, and he's telling me what clubs to take women to. Tom Selleck's giving me advice about women. It's like the joke. You know what I mean? It's like Clark Gable giving Pee Wee Herman advice about women. It's a joke.
I do have to say, because I'm a Magnum PI fan and I loved when you were on, and I watch it still now. But Tom Selleck, watching him now, he was a mountain of a man. That's a
Yeah.
big dude right
And
there.
I'll tell you something else too. He was a great baseball player. They were playing, softball between takes. They were really, and Tom was whacking him out there like Babe Ruth. I mean, they would pitch to him, and he was smacking that ball. I think he might have tried out for wanted to be a baseball player in his younger days. He was professional caliber. I swear, he was like in his prime in these days. I forget. He's probably about 12 years older, 10 or 12 years older than me, but he was whacking that ball and fielding, scooping up and fielding. So he was really I thought he was a major league caliber player.
And I had to tell my kids that Jonathan Hellerman is not British. He's from Texas.
Yes, exactly. Hey, Eddie, did you get some flapjacks for breakfast? We had breakfast. You go, Eddie, did you get some of those pancakes? And I go, this is Higgins. He's a British guy. But he would talk in that Southern drawl, and he couldn't have been nicer. Super nice guy. Oh,
If
Tom, I remember too. Something I absolutely hate, but it was Tom Selleck. But I remember one moment on the stage, Tom's eating black licorice, and I absolutely loathe black licorice. It's the most vile stuff in the world. It's like eating crap. But Tom's eating black licorice, and he comes like, "Hey, Eddie, you want some licorice?" And, I'm not going to say no. It's Tom Selleck, so I get it. And I choked down a piece of black licorice, almost puke. But it was Tom Selleck. So that's the only time in my life I ever ate black licorice.
I also want to ask the Fall Guy. You were on that as
Yes,
well.
Lee
Uh,
Majors was the greatest guy, super nice guy.
when you're on these big time shows and stuff like that, it has to feel good to have that kind of momentum that your name's getting passed around as a dependable actor, someone you could bring in and can, make a show better.
Yeah, and they would. You're right. You hope that's what happens, and I hope I did do that. I thought that was a good episode. I was proud of my Magnum episode, and I'm proud of my Fall Guy episode. They were both good episodes. Heather Thomas, I had done, I think, Zapped with a year before, so I knew her. She was a doll, and Doug Barr was super nice. But Lee Majors could not have been nicer. He was the nicest guy ever. And and when you're doing a show, when you're coming as a guest, I did a Facts of Life. I had a bit on a Facts of Life episode, and they couldn't have been nicer. All the girls were there except Blair. The other three girls I met, Joe was there, and the African American girl was there, Kim Fields,
Right.
and what's the other girl's name?
Mindy
Oh,
Cohn.
Matley, the
Yeah.
Jewish girl. She was
Yeah.
great too. They were so nice to me. Now, when you do a show, if they're mean to you, it's like you're going on, the enemy's turf. This is their home turf. So if they want to mess with you, they could. And I'm sure that's happened to some actors. Maybe you go on and some guy's an asshole on the show, and they've got you by the balls. This is their home turf. What are you going to say? So you just put up with it for a week and you. But I was lucky. They were every show I appeared on, every show I guested on, they were super nice to me.
What would you say? And I want to talk some more about different roles you've had, but if you had to look back, is there a role or something you did that you said, this is me at my best? Like if someone said, Eddie, what did you do for a living? What would you show them and say, this is me?
I would say I'm proud of I Want to Hold Your Hand. I did a movie called I Want to Hold Your Hand that first year, 77. I was 20. And Bob Zemeckis was the director, was his first film. And I fell in love with Bob. He's just the greatest director ever. He gave me leeway. He knew how to write my role. He was him and Steven Spielberg, too. It's the first film Steven ever produced. And they were both totally open to my ad lib. So I would make up stuff. There's a scene in the movie where Steven and I literally, I would walk the halls with Steven Spielberg and we would talk. We said, well, how can we make this movie funnier? And I go, Steven, I got this idea. I go, this scene where I'm in the scene with the cop, Dick Miller gets me. And he goes, now I got you, little shit. And I go, who you calling little? And I go, that was, and Steven laughed. And he goes, hey, Bob, Eddie has this gag. And I told him, and they let me put that gag in the movies. And, I'm a 20-year-old kid. And they just couldn't have been nicer to me. And I played myself for, and I played a Beatles nut, so I was kind of playing myself. So that was the closest I think I ever came to me. And I think that was my best role. I just did Beetle Fest with Denise, who takes care of me here. Denise and I went to Chicago. We did Beetle Fest, and they screened it twice. And I go, that was really good work. I go, that was probably the best thing I ever did.
What for you, what do you need out of a director to get the best out of you?
I would say just they're my friend because I've had one. I would say in all the directors I've ever had, movies and TV, maybe 100 directors, there was one asshole director and he's long gone. His name was Richard Fleischer. And he was known as this great director. He's this great dramatic director. You can look him up. His name is Richard Fleischer. But we did a movie called Million Dollar Mystery. I think it was his last film, but it was like about a treasure hunt, like a Mad Mad World. And for some reason, we didn't get on. He didn't like my kind of humor. I don't know, but I would say something. He'd go, no, he's like this crabby old curmudgeon guy. He was like about 96 years old, and he was just a crabby curmudgeon. And he didn't really give me leeway, so I felt uncomfortable on that film. Now, I loved the cast. I think that was Kevin Pollak's first film, and Kevin was wonderful, and everybody was nice in the film. Yeah, it was fun, but he was the only one I tried to get on with. But I would say they have to be your friend. You get on with your friend and you want to talk to them as your friend. Because if it's adversarial with your director, it's kind of like a baseball player hates his manager or something. It's very uncomfortable. They won't be as, I don't think you perform as good. It's probably true of any profession. At work, you want to be among your friends, people that support you.
What is your stance on ad lib? Did you like to ad lib? Because you mentioned before coming up with lines, trying to throw something in.
I
Um,
love, I, I love that. I always liked ad libbing. And brings me up to my stupidest story. This is my biggest regret, I would say, as far as roles I turned down. They wanted me, I went in to Rob Reiner and they
Mhm.
wanted me for Spinal Tap. This is Spinal Tap, the original movie. And I auditioned for that. And I did my shtick, whatever, and all. We ad libbed, I guess. And then there was word that they wanted me and they said, Rob, this movie's going to be pretty ad libbed. And for some reason, I got scared. I go, I can't ad lib with Rob Reiner and these guys. I got real scared. The joke is I could have done it easy. It could have done it. He was a super nice guy, great director. And I know Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton, yeah, he was a great guy. Who's the guy in Laverne and Shirley? Is that Michael
Michael
Keaton?
McKean.
Michael
McKean.
McKean, that's it.
Yep.
Mike McKean. But I knew him before. He was the nicest guy ever. And I knew Squiggy. They were nice. What's his name? David Lander. They were both nice guys. But anyway, I could have done it and I turned it down. And literally, Rob Reiner called my house. And my agent must have given him my number. And he called. And I'll never forget how he opened the call. He goes, Eddie, this is Rob Reiner. He goes, I hear you don't want to be in our movie. And he was real morose and gloomy. And I go, I'm sorry, Mr. Reiner, but I don't want to ad lib that. And I turned it down. It was the stupidest thing I ever did. Now, let's go karma 40 years later for punishing me for this. There's a Final Tap 2 coming out this year. It's coming out in a month now. And who's in it? Paul McCartney. So I could have fucking met Paul McCartney. I could have been in a movie with Paul McCartney because I'm sure they would have called me back, but that was my biggest, maybe not my biggest regret. It was bigger regret not being in an Airplane or Animal House, but it was my stupidest move. It was the thing that was 100% my responsibility and I blew it. I chickened out. It was dumb.
What was the role that they wanted you to be in that?
I think I was just going to be a fan or something. A fan, and I was obsessed with him. If I remember, it was something like that. But he must have liked me. He called me, and maybe he would have. Sometimes you go in and they expand your role. If they really like you, they'll add more to it. Maybe they would have done that. Anything could have panned out. But I just regret it. And when I heard this about Paul McCartney, it broke my heart. I would pay them to be in a movie with Paul McCartney and meet Paul. I would have made sure and said, please, what day will Paul be there? Can I come in and say hi and shake his hand?
Could you talk to us a little bit about, as an actor, from doing, live on screen to when you're doing voice acting? How did you sort of change your method, and what is that experience like?
Yeah, I started doing voiceovers in 1990. I remember I started doing films in 77, and I just did pretty much straight movies, as far as I know. But I remember they asked for me in a radio spot or something like that, and I did it.
Mhm.
And my hardest thing was always remembering lines. It got worse and worse as the years went by. It started in War Games when I did War Games with Matthew Broderick, and I was in my scene, and I kept screwing up. I screwed up over and over. And my director at that time was Marty Brest, who did Beverly Hills Cop later. But I kept screwing up. And he said, he got real mad and he took me around. He said, we're going to get you these things called idiot cards. And he got me idiot cards. And I read it and I did the scene in one take. I've been screwing up. And I did it in one take. I couldn't say data encryption algorithm. I kept doing data endocrine algorithm, data ongercron, data ambercron algorithm. And I kept screwing up. And I got it in one take. And I go, this is cool. And then voiceovers, I remember doing the radio spot and we nailed it. And I go, you get to just read your lines. And I fell in love with them, and I started doing radio spots. And then I branched off into cartoons. Dexter's Laboratory came soon and I did 25 episodes of that, and I started doing one-offs on the Cartoon Network shows, and I fell in love with that, and I started doing them, and I loved doing voiceovers, and they were a very nice community. The voiceover people were great people.
When you're doing it, are you with the other actors in sort of in the round, or is it sort of an isolated thing where you just sort of put out your lines?
That's the question I get asked most, and it can be both ways. The answer is
Okay.
sometimes you go alone. Sometimes you're alone in the booth and you'll do it, and sometimes you're with the whole cast. Like Dexter's Laboratory, I think I was always with the cast. Christine Cavanaugh was Dexter, and they had Dexter's father and mother. They total. I forget who they were, but Kat Cressida she was Dee Dee. But we were always there for that. But sometimes you go in, yeah, and you're just alone in a booth. They want to direct you alone. They want to spend time with you, and you'll do it alone. Yeah.
And you've also done, I have to say, um, Transformers, Scooby-Doo, Darkwing Duck.
Yes.
Sesame Street. That's got to be so cool to know that you were part of that universe.
Yeah, it was a fun universe. Those were great days at Cartoon Network. Sadly, it just folded a month or two ago, but it just went down and it broke my heart because they were wonderful people at Cartoon Network. There was a director named Colette Sunderman. She was the best female director I ever had, the best animation director I ever had. I always called her Steven Spielberg of animation because she was great. She did like all the Powerpuff Girls and all the Dexter's Lab. She was a wonderful lady, and she was great. For some reason, there's a lot of women in animation. There's always a complaint. There's not enough women directors in movies, and that's true. There's not men always vastly outnumber the women, but in animation, I think there are actually more women directors than male directors.
I say, it's especially, I mean, we do a lot with comic books, but the Marvel and DC, they do
Mhm.
so many animated movies. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been the groundwork for what everything's kind of built upon. Why do you think people still love the animation, that people of all ages still return back to animation?
Well, I grew up, reading in my era, I grew up loving the Fantastic Four. I read the comic books. I would love the cartoon. Say Iron Man, those were my two favorites, Fantastic Four and Iron Man. And I loved Iron Man. I would watch the cartoon and I read all the Iron Man comic books.
Mhm.
Now, I think, although they're still big and the backlash is probably so minor compared to how popular they are, it's AI, I think, is getting to be too much. Stevie and I will go to films and we'll always complain about the AI. Oh my God, there's so much AI, and you can tell.
Mhm.
But maybe that's what the people want nowadays. I guess apparently at the box office, people want to see AI, I guess. But
Mhm.
for me, I like the story. I'd rather have it without the AI. I'd rather just see a good story. Like the previous Fantastic Four, the one with Michael Chiklis.
Right.
I thought that was a good movie. I enjoyed that. And I liked the first Iron Man with Robert Downey. I thought that was a good movie. But now it's getting AI is taking over everything. And it's I don't like it myself.
Well, now that you mentioned comic books, let me open this door a bit. How did you discover them
Oh
growing
yeah, you
up?
got some great stuff back there. I can
Yeah,
see it.
thank you.
You work in a cool place.
Yeah, it's my basement.
Oh, very cool.
How did you first come about comic books as a child?
I think as corny as it is, I think Archie was the first. I was an Archie person. Then I switched over to the superheroes. I started watching them on TV, but I remember getting Archie comics when I was 11 or 12, and I loved those. I thought they were great. And yeah, then I got into the Marvel superheroes and started reading those. And yeah, I kind of got into the superheroes more. Iron Man, yeah.
And you had at the time the great artists. You had Jack Kirby and all these other
Yeah.
wonderful talents working on
Wonderful dude,
books.
Stan Lee. Yeah, I met Stan Lee once, and he was the nicest guy. I think I met him once, and it went bad. It was one of those encounters, and I luck out because I have good managers. Stevie's a great manager, and I had a great manager before named Brad Waisford. He was my manager. He was a great guy. But it was one of those things that happens to us all in life. You meet a celebrity or somebody you really admire, and it didn't go good. You say something good, or you couldn't make your personality felt, or you couldn't get across how much you love them. But I did something with Stan Lee, and it didn't go well. And my manager goes, "What's wrong?" And I go, "I met Stan Lee, and it didn't go." Da, 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 da. But anyway, he went over and got Stan Lee personally. Stan Lee sat down with me and talked to me face to face for like 15 or 20 minutes. And first of all, I remember about him, he had the greatest sense of humor ever. He laughed at everything. He was just a delightful, nice guy. And he laughed at everything I said. And he was just the sweetest, nicest guy ever. So that was really a precious meeting for me. I love meeting Stan Lee, and he was a wonderful, marvelous guy. And he gave us such great comics. But meeting the guy, he just seemed like a good humored, nice, he was a lot older than me, but an older man, but he was just a great guy.
This is a question I ask to a lot of guests because, from the generation above me who are comic fans, but did Marvel having Stan Lee as that figurehead affect you as a comic buyer that you like Stan so much, or having him out there talking to the press that influenced that you would buy maybe Marvel more than DC?
No, I think when I was a kid, I didn't know that. I think I knew of a guy called Stan Lee.
Right.
I didn't know years later that Stan Lee is like, he was like Hugh Hefner with Playboy. This is like his operation. But I just knew he was funny. The comics I read also, I remember I would buy Spider-Man, and they had a bit of humor to them. He was a superhero, but they were like these kind of funny things. And the Fantastic Four, there's like this funny thing. And Iron Man, the heroes make these wise cracks or something. And it wasn't like a straight superhero, straight thing. There was like this humor. And I think that's what Stan Lee gave them. But I didn't appreciate that till years later. I realized this is from the head of Stan Lee. This is from his mind that he created this great universe. I mean, look at what this guy created, the heroes and all this great stuff. He gave us so much.
100%, 100%. And with the comics as well, you work a lot of cons, different kind of cons.
Mhm.
How did you first get onto the con scene, and how has it grown since when you first started?
I started back in 1982. I go back that far doing the cons. I started 82. I would charge for my pictures $5, and
Mhm.
somebody called me for a con. I think it was in Hollywood, somewhere in LA. It might have been. I don't know if the Hollywood show goes back far, but my first con was 82, and I did it, and I charged $5 a picture. And I sat down and I go, "Is anybody actually going to buy my picture?" I was scared nobody would buy my picture. And to this day, I'll do a con with Stevie or Denise, and it would be quiet for first half hour. And I go, "We're going to bomb. Nobody's going to order a picture." I'm charging like $40, $50 a picture now, and it's the same thing, the same insecurity. And luckily the people always come through and they will buy. But I was scared at that time. I did $5 a picture, and then over the years it evolved, and I started doing when I did Grease. People always say, was there anybody on the set you didn't like? There was only one person on the set who kind of caused me fear. It's not that I didn't like him, but I was kind of scared of him. It was Jeff Conaway, Kanicki. Why? He was trying to get me laid. I was untouched at that time. I was 20 when we did Grease, and Jeff was a character. And he goes, I'm going to get you a hooker. We're going to get you laid. And I was real scared of Jeff. And I was scared, I was scared to see a hooker, I got laid for the first time. The next year, 21, I lost my virginity. But at the time, I was scared of Jeff. Anyway, to get to the point, Jeff and I were paired up at a show.
Mhm.
And we did a comic book show together, and I was charged $5. He goes, what are you doing charging $5? He goes, that's ridiculous. Jack it up to 20. So Jeff was the first one that got me to take my figures from 5 to 20. And I started charging 20. And I found people would pay 20. So I brought it up to 20. And Jeff and I did the circuit together. Jeff and I did we did. He was a great guy, and we got to be friends, and I got to love him. And we got to be friends through the years. We did several Grease reunions together. We did I think he was at the Hollywood Bowl show we did. That was the biggest Grease show I ever did. And we did a Hollywood Bowl. We did a sing-along. And that's where I realized how dirty Grease was, how dirty the songs were. Grease Lightning is a filthy song. But we did that. And then my last time with Jeff, he had a get-together with us, and it was very sad. He was gnarled over he was really a mess in those days. He was gnarled over, and I wheeled him in his wheelchair. And I remember we went to it was a little dingy little apartment, and we all got together. A few of the Grease cast were there with Jeff. And I remember saying, Eddie, did you get your soda? They had a soda machine, and I went out and bought a soda there. And I said goodbye to Jeff, and that was the last time I saw him.
Oh,
He passed away, I think, 2011.
yeah,
He was a super nice guy.
brother. When you work these cons, is it nice to see that the love is there? Like all these, like you said, the Grease came out 40 some odd years ago. There's fans that still love it, and all the other, movies and TV shows you've done, to have that sort of love from the fans.
Yes, that's the joy of it. We always go, Stevie and I go, yeah, we're here to make the green stuff. The money's fine. But we always say we want every customer to be happy. We want customers, and they will say the most beautiful things to me, those beautiful, kind things to me. How these movies have affected their life or whatever, how Grease affected life, what Polar Express means to them, da da da. And they'll talk. And it's a very touching thing. It's very, only I'll know what they said, but they say beautiful things to me. They're really nice people, and the movies did have an effect on their lives.
I do have to ask, though, is there one question you keep getting asked that you're sort of like, I've answered this many, many times in the past that you kind of, hit a wall with?
That's a great one. What would be the question I get asked the most time? That's a great question. It's usually the generic one. What was Tom Hanks like? What was Spielberg like? What was John Travolta like? I guess that would be it. I think that's a great question, and there should be a better answer to it. The answer may come. Sometimes the good answers come after the podcast is over. I'll think like an hour. I go, oh yeah, I should have told her on that. That was the answer. But as far as I know, that's the most common question. They'll say, what was such and such like, or what was it like filming Grease? I get that all. What was it like filming Grease? And the answer I always go, remember the greatest part of your life, the most fun party you ever had. I go, it was like that party, but imagine it lasting for 2 months. I go, that's what it's like. It was like going to a great party every day.
We've talked about your career, but I want to know, what does Eddie Deezen do on his time off? Do you have hobbies? What do you like to do for fun?
I'm on Facebook all the time. I'm a Facebook nut. I'm a compulsive joke writer. I like to look through and get jokes. I'll go, this will make my friends and my followers laugh. And I
Mhm.
love to write jokes, and I'll say this picture will be a funny caption for it. So I work on my Facebook a lot. I'm an inveterate reader. I love to read. This is what I'm reading now. This is what I got yesterday. Stevie and I got, so I don't know if you can see
Oh,
this.
wow,
It's
very
Elvis,
cool.
the Colonel and Elvis, 600 pages. So I have to get through that. This is the book I read, but I love Elvis, so I had to read that. Yeah, I love to read. I love to write. Not much TV here. Sometimes Stevie and I will go to the movies, but there's not much TV here. I used to watch much more TV in LA, but once in a while I watch TV here. But that's pretty much what I do.
And one thing I have to ask, and I'll let you guess where this question came from. But movies like Desperate Moves and Polish Vampire in Burbank,
Yes.
what were those
What about
experiences
him? I'm
like?
embarrassed enough. Well, Desperate Moves, I met my wife. Desperate Moves, I met my wife, Linda. It was a skating movie. And I met Linda. She was my wife, and I was married to her for 2 years. We dated for years. And then we got married in 84. We were married for a couple years, 84 through 86. But that's where I met her. She was a pretty Jewish girl. She looked kind of like Cher. She was actually too pretty for me, but she was very nice. She was 5 years older than me.
Mhm.
And Desperate was, I think I might have seen it when it came out. Stevie and I were trying to get it, and he said it's almost impossible to find. But it was a skating movie I did. The lead guy was Steve Tracy, and sadly, he was the first friend I had who died of AIDS. He died in the AIDS era, and he was a really nice guy. And yeah, we had a foreign director. It was a French guy, and he'd go, Pronte, Pronte. I remember he'd direct us in a French accent. Yeah, but those movies, they kind of drift away and they're kind of lost and they're there somewhere, but it's kind of like something you don't remember so much. Polar Express, Grease, War Games, they stand out. And then to a lesser degree, 1941, I want to hold it. But those ones are only the real, avid fans or the real film nuts will know about those. Most people don't even know about Desperate Moves, I don't think.
I just want to ask quickly about 1941 because
Sure.
it's an all-star cast. It's a
Uh-huh.
big name director, but like you said, it's kind of gotten lost. Like, Animal House and stuff, you had John Belushi in that,
Right.
but this is a film that you would think would still be one that's talked about for a long time. What do you
Right.
think I don't want to say
It's
what
kind
made
of
it smart, but go ahead.
I think it's what they say this, and it might be to be kind, but it's kind of like it's funny. Stevie and I were talking about this at breakfast today. It's kind of like a cult film now. It's Spielberg's only comedy. It's the only comedy Spielberg did, an out and out comedy. And when you realize John Belushi only left us with 7 movies, he only did 7 films, and this is one of the 7 films. So his legacy's there. It was Dan Aykroyd's first movie. I think it was John Candy's first movie, his first or second, and Mickey Rourke was his first movie. So Superstars came out of that movie. And there's some funny moments in it. I did it, and I didn't know who Murray Hamilton was. I never saw Jaws at that point. So
Mhm.
Murray and I would be on the Ferris wheel, and we'd have these talks all day. We'd have these intense talks, and I never once remembered Jaws being brought up because I didn't know about Jaws. I didn't see it 2 years later. Now I see what a great movie it is. But he was a great guy.
Mhm.
And I threw up in Steven's dressing room one day. That was the highlight. Steven was whipping us around one of the scenes on the Ferris when I got sick. And I
Oh.
go, Steven, can you let me down? And so he let me down. He goes, Eddie, go lay down in my cot in my dressing room. So I went, his pretty secretary had a pretty blonde secretary. She took me to his room and I laid down in his cot. And then I started feeling nauseous and I crawled on my hands and knees and I went to the toilet and I threw up. And I go, I just threw up in Steven Spielberg's dressing room. And I go, that was one of the highlights of my career. Throwing up in Steven Spielberg's toilet was a great moment.
Was there ever a moment on set that you were starstruck?
Um, let's see. John was so nice, and I knew John before that. I had met him before, and he was. Oh no, John was at the premiere of I Want to Hold Your Hand in New York,
Mhm.
and he was at the party. We had the party after the premiere, and I remember sitting with him on the. We went alone in like for 10 or 15 minutes, and we just talked. And I remember is how serious he was. He was not a lot of comedians are always with the jokes. He was not that kind of guy. He talked about heavier things. We talked very serious, and that's where I got to know him. So I knew him already, and Dan Aykroyd was the sweetest guy in the world. So he was nice. So I might have been a little overwhelmed because everybody watched Saturday Night Live in those days, so it was kind of overwhelming. But at that party, I remember I met John, I met Gilda Radner, and I met Lorraine Newman, and I met Chevy Chase at the Grease premiere. He was at the Grease premiere,
Mhm.
so I knew some of them, already. So I wasn't necessarily overwhelmed. And Steven, I knew from I Want to Hold Your Hand. He had been on the set there, so I knew him, and he did the promotional tour with us, so I knew Steven pretty well before that.
Mhm. Could you have seen a life not as an actor? And if so, what would you think you would be doing with yourself?
That's a great question. I didn't work much. I worked at my dad's jewelry store when I was a kid. My dad owned a jewelry store, and one day I took a nap in the display window, and Dad got so mad at me. Jesus Christ, what are you doing? That was my dad. My dad would grit his teeth and he'd say, "Jesus Christ." And he goes, "Jesus Christ, I'll think you're dead." And he was real mad when I got in the display window. So I knew I didn't want to work there for the rest of my life. My brother and sister ended up working for him at the jewelry store, but that would have probably been my fate because I couldn't do much else. I wanted to, like all goofy kids, I wanted to be a baseball player, but that was a joke. I couldn't play baseball. But this is all I could pretty much do. So I kind of lucked out.
What was your baseball team?
The Pirates. I was a Pirates fan when I was a kid. I grew up loving the Pirates, and I still love the Pirates. I was spoiled in those days because the Pirates were always good in those days. When I started, they won 2 World Series. I was there at the 1971 World Series. I was there at the first night game,
Oh,
and
wow.
I saw that. And the Pirates came back. We were down 3-0, and a pitcher named Bruce Keeson was pitching, and he came back, and we won 4-3. So that was my greatest moment in baseball. Greatest game I've ever seen. Most exciting moment. I was there at the last game of the 1970 World Series. My sister was an Orioles fan. So we went to see the Orioles play the Cincinnati Reds. So I got to see Pete Rose and Johnny Bench play. And we saw the game where the Orioles clinched it, game 5 at Memorial Stadium. And in those days, they would let us run out on the field. So they would let all us kids, the Orioles won the series, and all us kids, we ran out on the field. And I ran to second base and I slid in like Pete Rose. No, not Pete Rose, because Pete Rose, we were head first. But I slid in and I bruised my hip. I cut my hip, I remember. It was like the ground is harder than you think. You see on TV, they slide. It looks so cool. But I was a goofy 12 or 13-year-old, and I ran to second base, and I remember I cut my hip sliding into second base.
I will say I played baseball for many years. I never learned how to slide very well. It
Yeah,
looks
how do
so
they do
easy on
those guys?
TV.
Will, yeah, they slide and they stand right up. How do
Yeah.
these guys do that? There's some kind of technology we don't know.
And you got to see Clemente and Willie
I got
Stargell.
to see Clemente play. Yes, his birthday was yesterday. In fact, or
Yeah.
no, his birthday was today. Today's Roberto Clemente's birthday. He was my hero when I was a kid, and he was the greatest player I ever saw. He would throw. He had such a gun. He would throw to the plate on a fly. You know, everybody throws the plate on a bounce, but he
Right.
would go to deep right field and get one, and he would throw home and nail the runner. You know, on a straight throw. He had a gun for an arm, and he was a great hitter too.
Oh my gosh. Like you look at his batting stance and in today's game,
Yeah.
they would probably try to eliminate that so quickly because
Right.
it was
He
so
was always full.
fluid.
He was a hypochondriac. He would always be saying, I got pain in my neck and I got a pain in my arm. And he would go and he'd hit 350, you know, he'd go get 4 hits. But he was a hypochondriac. And you're right, he had the basket catch. Remember? He was like Willie Mays. He
Yeah.
did the basket catch, which nobody does anymore.
And we're back. What a fun guy. I really enjoyed speaking to him. I mean, the guy's done cartoons, movies, television, video games. I mean, he's killing it on the con circuit right now. And we're so happy for him. And we're so glad that he took a few minutes to speak to us on this interview. It was great fun. And Eddie, thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much for joining us this week. I hope you had fun with this. Who knows? Maybe we'll do more of these. Time will tell. But have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next time. Bye.